So as the lecture videos, you're watching them and Chris is going through some type of technique in the software, you'll notice that your memory is going to get full quickly. So you're all beginners. Some of you are coming in, have some basic Blender or Unity, and you might be quicker than the others. That's fine, whatever. But usually you hit some memory threshold pretty quickly because everything is brand new to you. So he'll start moving around. He might use some hotkeys, might use some context menus. Things might be popping up, moving really quickly. He might move up into the tabs, into the menus, and you're just going to have to pause it. And you might have to play him at half speed. He has a really good like pop-up system that like whatever keys he's pressing, whatever mouse buttons he's pressing, it'll show up in the recording, so that'll help you. But you remember, like it might be 10 seconds, 20 seconds, we have to pause it and then remember what he was doing, hunt around the menu, go to the geo, kind of remember what he was doing. And then reproduce what he was doing. So I guess it's the same as if you're watching stuff on YouTube or whatever. So you just have to kind of get used to the speed that you're currently at. And all of you are going to be all over the place, and it's fine. Just don't just listen. Like all this stuff is got to be an active learning. You just have to do it. You can't just sit there for 20 minutes, an hour, however long the lecture video is, just listen, be like, oh yeah, I got it, good. None of this stuff works that way. So take your time, and as you're moving through the videos, as you have issues or something, usually like your geo starts getting weird, things aren't acting right, things are bulging, or just, you know, when you're trying to use a gizmo or something and you're moving something, it's just like something's off. You don't know what it is. And so that's when you like take a screenshot. Yeah, that's the most helpful thing is when you do have a problem, along with a written description and you tag us on it, you got to do some screenshots. You got to show us what's going on. Sometimes you even do little videos, but in the very least, a screenshot or two. And through Discord will be your main way. And then so when you're really stuck, when you're really to the wall, he's available in the evenings after 6 p.m. I'm guessing most of you are still local. Like last semester, some of you went home and you're living in other countries or whatever, but it's 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you just message him and he'll start talking to you. And if it's like a real just mess, you're going to have to do some type of web conference and you have to share your screen or send him your project or something. So like these first few weeks, it might not really happen, but trust me, it starts ramping up fast. So don't be that student where you just wait a week, you wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then you're like, oh, I'm just gonna knock this out. This class is easy, whatever, and you're gonna hit a railroad of problems, just brick wall after brick wall. And we're just not available to help you for 10, 15 hours in a week. It's just not gonna happen. So that's how you spread out your movement. You spread out your learning, you spread out your development, and you're gonna hit all sorts of things, and you hit them one at a time, and then you come in and you get help and you move forward. And over the course of 5 weeks, you may have gotten help 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, but you completed the project and you learned and you're able to move forward. And then there's that student that's going to wait to that last week and their licenses don't work and they don't understand. Like you can't just watch the video for now and just build stuff. It's not going to happen, and we're not going to sit here for 15 hours because that's just unfair. So just get started early. We designed this course so that there's just enough work to keep you busy every week, and there isn't like a big cluster bomb just waiting for you somewhere. just move through the material. Get your Maya, get your Substance, decide if you want to do Unity or Unreal or both. Doesn't matter. And when you need tech help, based on what's happening in the videos, contact Chris here. He'll be available in the evenings. Is there any questions on that? Is everybody making progress? Because I know the first week, I know the average student, especially in the 201s, it's a bigger problem. That you've been trained to like sit back and just listen and have this passive learning experience, especially if you're younger and high school still fresh in your head. And that's like got to be broken. That's the worst thing for you to get through college. It's the worst thing for you to still have those habits as you're entering the real world. You need to take full advantage. You need to take full charge, responsibility, activity, and learning. You need to just dive in and break stuff and break yourself and just ask questions and make friends and keep asking questions to them and ask questions to us. And you need to take charge of yourself. So if you're coming into here and you're expecting lectures, it's not going to happen. In fact, I'm probably only gonna, like, if everything's up on online, I'm probably only gonna meet once a week. It'll probably be Fridays. Like, this is more of a hybrid class. But saying that, we are going back to so President Bloom sent out an email. I don't know if you read it, but it seems like the university is going back to live situation next week. So I will be in class. The classroom is GITC 3200 3200. That is the third floor. As you exit the elevator and you walk forward through the atrium, more toward your left is a double glass door. That's the beginning of the mixer lab. That's like the game design hangout room, get your work done. Go through a door in that room, and then you're in the teaching lab. There's 3 rooms. Past the teaching lab is the research lab, which I highly recommend getting involved in. Research projects is like the most hands-on you're going to get with software research design development for games. Now, that being said, I'll be in the classroom. But you do not have to be. All right. I'll always be running WebEx. I'll be running it just like this, but I'll be at the classroom. And all the help from Chris and all the general help about the software is going to be through Discord. So it's optional to come into class live. In fact, it's optional to come into class at all, except during when we actually do the main deliverables, we have to have a feedback session. But if you're doing the work and you get it, I don't take attendance. You don't have to come. Now, if you do wish to come, I do prefer WebEx. Although if you want to come into the classroom, it's great. I just don't want a full classroom. I did get COVID a few months ago, and it took me like 2 weeks to get over it. And I don't want to be in a packed classroom where there's no ventilation. It doesn't make sense. That being said, if you wish to come to the classroom, that's fine. But the main lectures are on video. And so I'm probably just going to be hosting class from now on the Tuesday session. So does that all make sense? Is there any questions? Cool. So feel free to ask anything. Feel free to clarify anything. Chat me privately if you don't want to say in front of others. Wait till everyone leaves, whatever. Just make sure you're very clear with what's happening. You have to stay consistent with the lecture videos, you can't just watch them. You need to sit there and really spend the time with the projects. I will be hosting class on Tuesdays, and you can join with WebEx if you care to, or you can come in live if you care to, but it's optional. So let me just read through the chat a little bit. I've been using Maya, just been struggling with it because I don't know why, but I have this intense hang up from Maya. That's fine. So when I first started using 3D packages, nothing made sense. When I started learning game engines, nothing made sense. When you start learning coding or anything, it doesn't matter. The first steps, nothing makes sense. You just have to keep hammering away at it, and you got to try it from different angles to like try to get a broader understanding. Then finally things click. Also, you could try other 3D packages. I know a few people are using Maya. I'm sorry, Blender. Maybe you want to give Blender a try. Maybe you want to talk to the Blender people. Sometimes certain interfaces and certain jargon, certain terminology in the software just like clicks with people. Some people just love Blender. Some people love Maya. Some people love Max. Um, and just as well as always I'm listing stuff, there's others you can look into, Cinema 4D and Houdini. In either case, get the free student versions, get the free trials, whatever, and just try them out. Do some basic tutorials, see what you think about them. You have to explore to see what package you want to really like dive in and like own it and be like, this is my professional tool. But keep pushing through. It's your first week or two with Maya. But all these interfaces are all the same, even with the game engines. Once you learn one, you basically learn them all. You just have to fight through. So I need to get started and download everything, go through the lecture videos. Yep. Yeah. So basically the stuff I'm talking about is just like very fundamental computer graphics stuff. And even that, it's like, oh, that's really interesting. But until you get your hands dirty, none of it. The only reason I talk about this stuff and I'm interested in this stuff is because I'm like in it. I'm in the middle of it, and I use this technology all the time. It's interesting to go deeper, and that's the only way you're going to find interest with it. I think DJ, yeah, lab monitor, yeah, we have federal work studies. I would definitely jump into that. I mean, it's a whole space, great computers, but basically you're by yourself or with a few friends, and you just make use of the whole space, just build projects and just do your classwork there. And yes, research pro, I would highly recommend Professor Vinikov and Professor Daher. They're doing research is great. It just dives you in firsthand to the full cycle, of developing software. And video games is software. It's just entertainment software. So just anything you do, get your hands dirty, whether it's computer graphics or programming or software design or even research. And all that stuff is explored in research projects. So definitely get into the research lab and just start working on stuff, even if it doesn't make any sense. Just dive in and do it. I found Blender easy to pick up, and it's free by default. Yep, Blender is an amazing tool. Give it a try. Um, think of this as your exploration time. Dabble. You don't have to pick Unity or Unreal right now. Try both. You don't have to pick Maya or Blender or anything else or Houdini. People out in the field are using multiple things all the time. You don't just sit in one package. And the more that you explore and understand, just the more generalized your knowledge, and you're able to just do more. You're more useful. All right. So is there any other just those first 2 week jitters like that need to be getting out talked about? Blender is great, but because I'm having a problem with it. I don't know why. If there's this lag in Maya whenever I even move the camera around. I mean, my first inkling would be that it's a graphics card driver is not updated, or anything with your OS isn't updated, because Blender and Maya could be using different drivers or different libraries. So if Blender's working great, Maya's not, make sure everything's updated on your computer. And yeah, with Maya, if the camera's lagging and there's like, you just open up a scene, there's nothing in it. Yeah, that's a big mess. That's not supposed to do that. So there's something either with your drivers, your computer, or there is there's a way to, like, if you've really messed up the settings, you can like delete. I think it's this environment variable. You could just like delete my reset setting. Like, I think you could delete that file. Okay, Windows settings, preferences, restore default settings. Maybe it's another program I'm thinking of where you just kind of you delete like the settings file and it'll just get rebuilt. I didn't read the whole directions. Windows settings and preferences. Edit, restore. Preferences. That's right. Go to edit, restore default settings. I don't see this edit. Yeah, this is more what I'm looking for. Locate the preference folder. Restart Maya. Yeah, this is what I'm looking for. All right. See users, my documents, Maya version. Okay. So this prefs folder, if you delete this and then restart Maya, it'll be recreated. And if there's any funkiness with any settings, it'll be reset to factory settings. So give that a try. In either case, so things I was talking about last week, were they confusing? Do you need a repeat on any of that? An expansion? Was it useful? Everything's good. So let me talk about how to manipulate some meshes. So let me start with on the side. So let me minimize some of these things. All right, you'll learn that there's a few different ways to create meshes. Yes, you do have some default ones. Other common situations are you can draw curves and extrude them up, or extrude surfaces along them. But I did want a cylinder. So these are two cylinders, besides the fact that I can click on this one. And pretty sure I turn the top off. Nah, these modeling tools are a little out of date. Like there should be some options here to like disable the tops and bottoms and what have you. But in either case, you can see that these are two cylinders, but their icons look different. And I went into different menus. So here was poly modeling. Here's curves and surfaces. So these are what are called Nurbs. They are not in this form meant for real-time applications. They're not meant for games, but they're very useful to create shapes, and they're very useful to use in the modeling process. And if you're rendering images or animations out of the content package, they're fine. But eventually you do, there's like a process, a tool to convert what's called a Nurbs into a polygon. So a polygon is just a shape with many sides. Poly and gon, I mean, many sides. And polygons, as you learned, are made of components of vertices, edges, and faces, which faces and polygon, there's sometimes they can be interchanged, but here they're called faces. And then when you select the whole thing, it's the polygon, or it's called the mesh. In some situations, they'll call it the mesh, and they'll call the face the polygon, because technically a polygon is more of a two-dimensional shape that has many sides, but sometimes people call the entire 3D surface a polygon. So just know that there might be some conflicting terminology. In any case, those are the parts that make up what's known as a polygon model. And you can see the icon there, and this you can bring into a game engine. Now this is a Nurbs. Now what's called it's like a non-uniform rational B-spline. So B-splines have been around for a long time. Nurbs have been around a long time. Nurbs started like in the beginnings of computer graphics. It was used a lot with like industrial design, especially with cars. So this is kind of like the basics of computer graphics, and they use something a little different. Stuff called control vertices, surface patches, surface points. And the essence is they're basically controlled by these control vertices. Notice that this vertex doesn't like sit on the surface. And as you move it, it's not just like impacting the direct area of it. It's kind of like having this soft bowing out impact on a major area of it. So behind the scenes, it's like a completely different technique. So sweep mesh. Let me just look down. And the origins of it, can I create? Okay, CB curve tool. So where's the settings for my tool? Okay, here they are. So I'm just going to start dropping down some points. And since it's a 2D curve, it's easiest to wrangle it, to manage it in an orthographic view, in this case, a top-down view, because it gets a little unwieldy to manage in 3D view. So we have to start 2D first. So a few things to note is there's this, it's kind of hard to see, but there's this brown, where I'm dropping the points, it's making a straight line. It's brown line. All right, this is like the control curve. It's not the rendered curve. The white is the rendered curve. And it's starting to like have more points and starting to be like more curvy. And this is how they were starting to get like those nice curves on like car bodies. And this term of B-splines are, you might have, if you've ever used vertex tools, was it bitmap and vector? So if you ever use like Illustrator or vector tools, it's the exact same thing, where you're kind of, in this case, they call them like Bezier curves, but they're very similar. So if I place down one more curve, press the Enter key, you see the end result, the end curve that's shown to you, and this is what the icon looks like. The tool settings out of the way. And you see that it's a Nurbs curve. And then if I right click on it, you see I get kind of the same components as a Nurbs surface. But I'm really interested in these control vertices. And you'll do something similar to this in your kind of 2D illustration packages. But you might be okay, so edit point, it'll kind of create it'll take the point that's on the curve that's being like manipulated by its control structure, but it'll try to like move it more of a direct influence, a direct movement, but it still kind of calculates back on those control vertices to figure out the final shape. What I wanted to see is that I think they also have, okay, Bezier curve tool, here it is. So this is something if you use 2D graphics that you're very familiar with. I start dropping these points down. Press the Enter key. So there was, let me create this curve again. I got to read the instructions. Reset anchor, bring the tangent, close the curve. So if I drop and then, okay. So I'm holding down Shift. And this is what's known as like the tangent handle, like the little handle that you can play around with. That's like defining how big of a slope, how big of a curve it's impacting. All right. And this is like exactly how the curves in Illustrator work. But you can define really elaborate curves by just a few points, and how you can close the curve, Control Shift. Okay. So with a closed shape, you can like fill it, you can extrude it, and you can like make polygons from this. But notice as I come back here and I drop the control vertices, now they have these big handles and you can kind of manipulate them. So ultimately you can make all these nice finessey, curvy stuff. And notice that this one's starting to get a little edgy, like you can kind of see the faceting, you can kind of see that all the straight lines that are made to generate the idea of a curved line. And this one is a lot more slopey, there's a lot more kind of curviness and more organic, there's more resolution to it. And then when you bake these out, when you like want something that's just as curvy, you need a lot more resolution. So I'll take the cylinder. I'm just going to press the 3 key. Chris does this later on. This is called like smooth mesh preview. It's not really smoothing. It's not permanent because I can press 1, 2, and 3. And for render purposes, it'll render like this within Maya, but it's not going to bring the geometry over. But it's useful to like, if you like the amount of smoothing, there's actually an operation to do that permanently. There's a smooth operation. But what I wanted to show you is that, oh, look, it looks like kind of nice and curvy on the sides, but we're getting a lot of these like weird facetings, and things don't look great. And that's because there's just not enough resolution to hold this curving here. So if we look at the construction history of the polygon, I'll press 2 so you can see the basic shape and then a smooth shape. And let's see if I add some resolution. Let's see, this is adding subdivisions along the height. Notice how not only is it kind of fluffing out, it's like pushing out, we're going back to our original amount of volume, we're not losing a lot, but we're also getting rid of a lot of that weird artifacts. So by adding resolution, you can have a lot of impact to the shape. But we're going to have a budget here. You can't just put all these polygons on the screen at real time. You're going to kill the frame rate. So there's this you're always doing this balancing act when you're creating real-time content. That how much resolution, how many polygons do I need to make nice, fun, curvy, realistic shapes or whatever style you're going for, while not going overboard, while keeping that frame rate up, whatever the target is, 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second. When you're just creating stills and animations out of Maya or something like that, you don't need to be that concerned with how much bloat you have, how many polygon counts you have, how many vertices. It just means you'll have longer render times, but if you have to wait 5 seconds for a render or 20 seconds for a render, do you really care? But video games, you have to be super aware, and you got to make sure everything's running to a streamline effect. So yes, you're going to want some nice curviness instead of just always blockiness. Sometimes you can achieve that with the geometry. Sometimes you can achieve that with the texture, the shader. Like if you ever heard of normal maps, normal maps will try to give the illusion of more surface detail than there really is. So what's happening here is this is the underlying mesh, low res, that goes into the game engine. This is the high res one. So if you ever heard of sculpting techniques or ZBrush or Mudbox, usually somebody will create the low res version that has all the big, broad surface changes, forms of a 3D object, in this case a head. Like you can define this as a head, it's just low poly, right? But all the major shapes and forms are there. So it takes somebody with a real skill to like make that look like, just how much resolution do you need to define that there's a human head? And then this gets passed off to the sculptor. Maybe it's the same person, but they super high res this thing. They'll go from this to this. So just so you're aware, display polygons. Where's Polygon? This thing has 82 vertices, which creates 170 edges, which makes 90 faces. Those faces need to be cut up into triangles. Not everything is a quad right here. There are already triangles, so these don't need to be cut up, but everything else does. That's why it's not 90 times 2 or 180, because we already have some triangles. They don't need to be cut up into, they're not quads, they need to be cut down further. And then the UVs later on we'll learn about, there's 106 of them. Now, let's say this is our low mesh asset that'll go in the game engine, but I'm going to pass it off to a sculptor who does super crazy high res stuff to it. If I actually smooth this thing, say 2 divisions, we now have something nice and fun and smooth, but it is now 1300 verts with 2700 edges that make 1300 faces. So if I undo that, we went, this is still a smoothing of one division. Back to 82. We went from 80 to 1300. It's a 16-fold, 16 times the amount of density. So there's no way we can bring that into the game engine, but someone can make something look super amazing, super realistic, and it gets baked out as a texture map. Now this gets laid out in the UV space. How to apply 2D texture to a 3D object, it needs that UV space to understand the relationship between the two. Notice that it's like taking a skin and like splaying it out. So you think of it with like gift wrapping, with gifts, wrapping up a box. What type of paper do you need to wrap the whole thing? You could think of it with like taxidermy, whatever they do with the animals, whatever. But in any case, all this crazy amount of detail on a geometry gets figured out as a normal map. So they like, oh, if I look at this low res one, compare it to this high res one, just that little area, what is the surface difference, the surface detail difference between low res and high res, and all those little normal arrows. So that's why it's called a normal map. If I say display face normals, it's not that many normals, right? Manageable, you could say. Now, if I smooth it to fold, look at all these face normals, one for each face, 16 folded normals to understand this surface. Now, the difference between one face, which has one normal that gets like super high resed up 16, 20, 30, 40, 50 times, all that change in normal information gets recorded as RGB colors. So that's why it's like green here and red and blue. I forget what it means. Something like green means the difference in like Y up and down of the normal difference. And like red might be like left, right, X. And then Z would be blue or something like that. But when you use like these more sophisticated shaders that are called standard shaders or physically based render shaders, if you do say, yes, I have a normal map, and you connect it to the texture file of your normal map, it'll be a trickery of light. So when I said before that there's a light source, that everything you need to like render something is you need the light source, you need the geometry and a shader on it. In between all that, it figures out how to light this thing, how to render it to camera. Now, when you put a normal map on it, it's almost like, oh wait, this face is pointing this way, and light's pointing this way. But in addition to that, there's a normal map where that little texture part that lays over this face now has all these RGB color information that's saying the difference of the normal from the low to the high mesh in all three directions based on the color channels. And it says, oh, wait, I'm going to light this thing differently. And that's why you get the end result of something like this. This is in the game engine with the low mesh model with a normal map applied, the normal map being baked out from the high res model. And here's the low mesh model with normal map looking really good in the game engine. This goes into the game engine, mixed with that, you get this. Now, when you compare D with B, you might notice that it's not 100%. there's some little bit of differences. For example, you notice like the sharp edging, especially on the silhouette. Notice the sharp edging at the top here, sharp edging there. Notice on the super high res one doesn't have that because it's got an insane amount of geometry. But we're really doing a fakery, putting this onto this to get this. And you can still notice the little sharpness. But in general, it boosts the realism while still being performant. And this is down the road. You won't be doing high res modeling, but you'll be doing normal maps with your texture workflow. But just know that these are the benefits of low res and high res modeling mixed with normal maps in the game engine. All right. And the point of the Nurbs and the curves and the polygons was just to show you all the different ways to create geometry. Although ultimately this stuff gets all baked out into polygons eventually. Usually use curves to like loft and develop more geometry. But ultimately you'll get a polygon. Is there any questions on any of that? All right. Are you stuck with any of the software in the videos that is stopping you right now? Any major issues? I'm going to let you go to get caught up on the videos. Hang out if you need to talk to me without a lot of people around. We are down around here. We're starting up week 2. And remember that all the way down here on about a month from now, we have our first deliverable. Don't hang out. Get started now. As you run into issues, tag Chris and myself. Chris can help you on the evenings for real in depth, like let's really work on your project. And I will be in next Tuesday. What's that in the chat panel? So I'll be in next Tuesday. I'll be in the classroom if you care to come, but WebEx will be open. I would prefer you come into WebEx. Just because I don't want to pack the class and I don't want to increase my risk of COVID. But if you want to come in, please come in. Yeah, download the software, dive into the videos now. You need to get your hands in there. Yep, definitely. Have a good one and hang out if you need to talk to me. Have a good one. Have a good one. Yep. Say you need to talk to me? Hello. Did you need to talk to me? You can write in the chat panel. I don't hear you. I can unmute you.